Hey y'all, I'm glad you stopped on over to do a little review here on square roots because it's going to really help you with the special right triangles part of Unit 7. So one thing you have to do is be able to multiply square roots. So it's important to know that you can multiply square roots together. So I have 2 times the square root of 3. Remember, this is a multiplication in here. And that's all multiplied by the square root of 2. So the square root of 3 and the square root of 2 can be multiplied together, but the 2 kind of has to stay out here. So this ends up being 2 square root of 3 times 2. So we just take these two numbers that were underneath the square root, put them underneath the same one, and we can multiply them together. And we get simply 2 times the square root of 6. And we can't simplify the square root of 6, so we leave it that way. And we don't want a decimal to round, so we leave it as 2 times the square root of 6. So, similarly, over here I have 4 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. So I have 3 numbers here being multiplied. These two are both underneath the square root symbol, so they can kind of hang out together and we can multiply them together. So we get 4 times the square root of 2 times 2, which gives us 4 times the square root of 4. And hopefully we know that the square root of 4 is a perfect square, and that ends up being 2. And just as I said over here, the operation between the 4 and the square root symbol is multiplication. So I multiply 4 times 2, and I get the final answer here, the simplest form, to be 8. Another thing you might have to do here is rationalize a denominator. We don't like square roots in the denominator of fractions, so we need to get rid of it. The easiest way to do that is to multiply the top and the bottom both by whatever the square root on the bottom is. So I think I've showed that. I do 2 times the square root of 3. We know that we can't multiply those together from the previous slide, so we just write them 2 times root 3. On the bottom we get root 3 times root 3. Again, from the previous page, that becomes just the square root of 3 times 3. We'll simplify the bottom. And we know the square root of 9. That's a perfect square, 9 is. So that square root of 9 becomes 3. Can't simplify any further. So there is our simplest form. It may look a little more complicated, but in math, the simplest form is when the square root is not in the denominator. Similarly, over here, we'll multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. Use our square root multiplying rule. On top, we end up with 4 root 2. At the bottom, we end up with the square root of 2 times 2. Simplify that 2 times 2 to be 4. We know the square root of 4 is 2. And then here we have an extra step because we can simplify this 4 and 2. 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. So our final answer is 2 root 2. So this one looks a little bit simpler than the last one. But what makes it simple in terms of math is that there is no denominator with a square root in it. So if you did take your time to watch this video, go ahead and try these practice questions. If you do want me to do them in class, go ahead and ask. I can do them individually, or you can ask me while I'm going over the U-tries for the special right triangles.